It was just after midnight on April 1st, 2006. The streets of Columbus, Ohio buzzed with life. It was the start of spring break. Bars were overflowing with students celebrating their brief escape from routine. But while many were lost in the thrill of the night, one man would vanish in plain sight, without a trace. Welcome to Whispers of True Guilt, as we dive into chilling true crime stories where every whisper leads to the truth. From unsolved mysteries of vanishing of Brian Shaffer to haunting confessions, Whispers of True Guilt unearths the darkest secrets, one case at a time. Brian Shaffer, 27 years old, a second-year medical student at Ohio State University. Described as bright, funny, and full of life. But behind the smile, Brian was grieving. Just weeks earlier, his mother, Renee, had passed away. Friends say he was coping, doing his best to stay strong, but something behind his eyes looked distant, like his mind was somewhere else. That night, he met up with his close friend, Clint Florence. The plan was simple: bar hop, blow off some steam, and toast to the coming week off. The night unfolded like any other. A couple of drinks at the first stop. Laughter, jokes, music, nothing out of the ordinary. Yet. Just before 1 a.m., they made their way to the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar on the second floor of a building just off campus. Security cameras captured Brian and Clint riding the escalator up. Brian was smiling, carefree, alive. Inside, the bar pulsed with energy. Crowds danced, glasses clinked. Brian texted his girlfriend Alexis, who was visiting her family in Toledo. She was supposed to leave with Brian for a romantic trip the next morning. Everything felt normal. At around 1:55 a.m., Brian was seen on surveillance again, this time outside the bar, speaking briefly with two young women. The interaction was casual, friendly, and then, just like that, he turned around and walked back toward the bar's entrance. That moment, that frame on the footage, was the last time anyone would ever see Brian Shaffer. He was never captured leaving the bar, not through the front, not through the back. There was no footage of him exiting, no witness who recalled seeing him leave. No noise, no panic, no scuffle, nothing. It was like he had been swallowed whole by the night. By 2 a.m., the bar was closing. Clint and Meredith Reed, another friend who had joined them later, searched for Brian. They assumed he had gone home without saying goodbye. But when Alexis couldn't reach him later that morning, her worry began to rise. And then it began. The calls, the texts, the voicemail, the silence. Brian never showed up for the trip. He never came home. He never answered his phone. What happened in that narrow window of time? How could a man walk into a crowded bar with multiple security cameras and never come out? In the weeks that followed, police would dissect every frame of surveillance footage. They would scour every inch of the bar, every possible exit, every alley. But in this episode, we're left only with the smile on Brian's face and the question that still haunts Columbus: how can someone simply vanish from a bar? Now we go deeper, into the very place where he was last seen alive. The Ugly Tuna Saloona wasn't a massive club. It sat perched on the second floor of a small complex off North High Street. Entry was limited. Security cameras monitored both the escalator leading up and the main door. There were no side exits for customers, just a service door in the back, which led into a messy, dimly lit construction zone. Not exactly an easy escape route. Investigators analyzed the surveillance tapes, frame by frame. They watched Brian walk up the escalator. They watched him chatting outside. But in all the hours of footage reviewed, not a single frame showed him leaving. So where did he go? Some speculated Brian left disguised, wearing a hoodie, ducking past cameras. But he wasn't dressed for stealth. He wore jeans, a short-sleeved shirt, and tennis shoes. Nothing to hide behind. And he was seen returning inside just minutes before closing. By then, security was tighter. Everyone was being cleared out. Others questioned, could he have taken the back exit through the construction zone? Police checked. The route was cluttered, dark, and dangerous. A person stumbling through would have made noise. And even if Brian had exited that way, why? What would drive him to sneak out in the final moments of the night? The security footage should have answered everything. Instead, it deepened the mystery. There were theories, lots of them. Some believed Brian fell victim to foul play, perhaps an altercation inside the bar that was quickly covered up. But no blood, no struggle, no screams, and no witnesses ever came forward. Some said he died accidentally, falling into a construction shaft, hidden from view. Police searched every crawl space, duct and drain. Nothing. Others were more sinister. Did Brian walk into a trap? Was someone waiting for him inside? Someone he trusted? And then there's the theory that haunts this case the most. That Brian never left the building because his body never did. Could his body still be there? Hidden? Covered up in the chaos of a busy bar? Or was something removed long before police realized he was missing? Brian's father, Randy Shaffer, publicly questioned the bar's security. He pressed investigators. He asked, "How does a man disappear from a place with only one way in and one way out?" No one could answer. And through it all, Alexis kept calling. Her voicemails filled with hope. Slowly turned to pain. Every ring that went to voicemail echoed the dread that Brian wasn't just missing, he was gone. But if Brian didn't leave on foot, and he didn't leave in view of the cameras, then what happened inside the ugly tuna saloona? Let's confront the people who were closest to him. The friend who won't talk. The phone that rang months later. The possibilities no one wants to say out loud. Stay with us. The silence is getting louder. Now we focus on the people closest to Brian, and a phone call that chills investigators to this day. When police began their investigation, they turned to Brian's companions that night, Clint Florence and Meredith Reed. Meredith had driven to pick the two men up near the end of the night. But it was Clint, Brian's longtime friend, who had spent the evening bar hopping with him, who had laughed with him, who had stood beside him just before he vanished. Clint answered questions. At first, he told police Brian was a little drunk, but not out of control. He said they got separated at some point before closing, assumed Brian had left on his own and went home. But soon after, something changed. Clint stopped cooperating. When police asked him to take a polygraph test, Clint refused. His lawyer said there was no reason for suspicion, that Clint had nothing to hide. But the refusal only raised more questions. Why not just take the test and clear your name? What was he afraid of? Detective Andre Edwards' lead on the case said it plainly. He could be the key to finding out what happened to Brian. Then there was Alexis, Brian's girlfriend. Her heartbreak became the emotional pulse of the case. She called him every day, left voicemails, sent texts, pleaded, hoping that somehow, somewhere, Brian was out there, listening. And then, in September 2006, months after the disappearance, something unexpected happened. Brian's phone rang, just once, a single ring. The call pinged a cell tower in Hilliard, Ohio, roughly 14 miles from Columbus. Could it have been a glitch? A pocket dial from a discarded phone? Or was it him? Verizon, the phone company, later stated it was likely a computer error, but that explanation never satisfied Brian's family or the public. If it was an error, why did it only happen once? Why that tower? Why that day? Investigators followed the lead, but it fizzled out. Still, it ignited fresh hope. Was Brian alive? Had he left on his own? Was he being held somewhere, trying to reach out in the only way he could? Some theorized Brian had staged his own disappearance, devastated by grief over his mother's death and seeking escape. But those who knew him insisted it was impossible. He was in love. He had a future. He was days away from proposing to Alexis. Others suspected foul play, and Clint's refusal to take a polygraph became a louder whisper in the minds of many. Theories circled, rumors spread, but the one thing that remained unchanged was the silence. No updates, no confessions, no new clues. Just a phone that stopped ringing, and a friend who wouldn't talk. The truth hasn't surfaced, but the shadows are getting darker. A phone call from Brian's number shattered months of silence. A friend refused a polygraph. Hope and suspicion grew louder. But one thing remained the same. Brian was still missing. Now we enter the darkest corners of speculation, the theories that keep this mystery alive. In the years following Brian Shaffer's disappearance, investigators and the public began to ask the terrifying question: what if he never left the bar because he never could? One theory suggests Brian was murdered inside the Ugly Tuna Saloona. That someone, perhaps a stranger, perhaps someone he knew, lured him into a trap. But in a place packed with people and watched by security cameras, such a crime would require precision or inside help. There were no signs of blood, no signs of struggle, no missing time. But there were gaps. Blind spots between camera angles, poorly lit back areas, and the cluttered construction zone behind the bar. Could a body be hidden, smuggled out, or concealed in a place no one thought to look? Another theory, even darker, links Brian's disappearance to the smiley face killer hypothesis, a controversial idea that a group of serial killers operates across the U.S., targeting young college-aged men, particularly near bodies of water. Supporters of this theory note eerie similarities: intoxicated victims, late-night vanishings, and no witnesses. But critics say there's no real evidence, only patterns formed from fear. Still, Brian's case fits that pattern too well. Too perfectly? Could it really be coincidence? Then there's the theory that Brian walked away willingly. Grief-stricken after his mother's death, overwhelmed by pressure, perhaps he ran, changed his identity, started over. But there's a problem with that idea. Brian had plans. He was in love. He had booked a vacation. He was preparing to propose to Alexis. And if he had wanted to disappear, why choose a crowded bar with cameras? Why risk being seen at all? Years passed. Leads dried up. Hope thinned. Then in 2010, tragedy struck again. Brian's father, Randy Shaffer, died in a freak accident while clearing storm debris from his yard. A tree branch fell and killed him instantly. Randy had never stopped searching for Brian, never gave up, and in death, he became a symbol of the case's weight. But the real chill came afterward. On Randy's online obituary, someone left a comment. It read, "Dad, I love you. Love Brian, U.S. Virgin Islands." Investigators traced the IP address. It came from a public computer in Franklin County, Ohio, not the Virgin Islands. Likely a cruel joke. Or was it? Was someone playing games with a grieving family? Or was someone, maybe even Brian, sending a message from the shadows? The case, now decades old, remains open but stagnant. Every year anniversaries pass. Candles are lit. Theories are revisited, but the hole Brian left behind only deepens. No body. No evidence. No closure. Just a bar, a camera, a missing man, and a message that may never be decoded. Let's ask the hardest question of all. What if Brian is still out there? Watching. The silence is deafening now. And the guilt? It whispers. Theories stacked on top of sorrow. A father's death. A cryptic message. And a hole in reality that no one has been able to fill. Now we confront the most haunting truth of all. That maybe, just maybe, Brian Shaffer is still out there. Almost 2 decades have passed. Faces have aged. The bar is closed. The world has moved on. But for many, the name Brian Shaffer remains etched into the bones of Columbus, Ohio. And in the hearts of those who knew him, one question remains unanswered. How does a person disappear without a trace and stay gone forever? Each year on April 1st, locals revisit the case. True crime forums reignite. Reddit threads churn with new ideas. Cold case enthusiasts dissect old footage and forgotten interviews. Some swear they see Brian's face in crowds. Others say he was spotted in Mexico or living homeless in California. But nothing sticks. Nothing holds. The Ugly Tuna Saloona, his last known location, is now gone. The building has changed hands, but its ghost remains. People still take photos of the space, still walk past slowly, still whisper, "This is where it happened." The case has become more than just a disappearance. It's a psychological riddle, an urban legend, a scar. Brian's mother died just before he vanished. His father died searching for him. His girlfriend waited years for a call that never came. His brother Derek lives in the shadow of the missing, grappling with the weight of what could have been. And we're left with only theories and the terrifying silence between them. What if Brian died that night and was never found? What if someone got away with murder? What if he's alive, watching, wondering if the life he left behind even remembers him? There's a cruel kind of poetry in the idea that someone could vanish in the middle of a city on a busy night, inside a packed bar, surrounded by cameras, and never be seen again. Maybe that's why his story still haunts us. Because it could happen to any of us. Because it shows how fragile presence really is. Because no matter how loud the world becomes, some people disappear so quietly, you never hear the goodbye. Brian Shaffer walked into a bar and never came out. And that silence, it still echoes through Columbus, through every person who wonders, through every unanswered question, through every what if this was the story of Brian Shaffer. But it's also a story of us, the ones left behind, the ones still listening. Because every crime leaves a whisper, and sometimes that whisper never fades. If this story left you thinking, don't scroll away. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and join us as we uncover the crimes that refuse to stay silent. Because every crime leaves a whisper, and you don't want to miss the next one. Thanks for watching to the end.